But I'd like to welcome everyone today to this webinar, which is called From Case to Immersive AI Case, Designing Gen AI-Powered Teaching Cases with LiveCase. Sorry, there was a lot of cases in that title, but it does the job. So whether you're joining us live or you might be watching the recording later, we're really pleased to have you all with us today. My name's Antoinette Mills, and I'm the Director of Communications at the Case Centre, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. So before we get going, I'd just like to share a little bit about the Case Centre for those of you that don't really know us so well. We're the independent home of the Case Method, and we're a registered charity. And our mission is all about advancing the Case Method worldwide. So we do this in three ways. We provide access to a world-leading, diverse collection of teaching materials. We help faculty and schools showcase their case impact through awards, competitions, bestsellers, and our impact index. And we also offer professional development through workshops, scholarships, and of course, webinars like this one. Now, we're constantly working to broaden the diversity of the collection across regions, industries, protagonists, and case formats. And in that way, educators can draw on the richest possible range of teaching materials. So we hear from a lot of educators saying that they want to bring more multimedia, more interactive items into their classrooms. And to support this, we're really proud to distribute LiveCases. These are multimedia chat simulations where learners don't just read the case, but they live and feel the events as the protagonists of a carefully crafted dynamic journey. And today we're going to hear from Antoine Duvauchelle, who's co-founder of LiveCase and also a lecturer at INSEAD. And Antoine's going to give us a guided walkthrough showing the design logic, the structure and the pedagogy behind immersive AI cases and show us how the LiveCase platform makes it possible. I'll also spend 5 minutes at the end showing you how to find current LiveCases on our website. So before we get going and I hand over to Antoine, a few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on those as we go through, and then we'll come back to them at the end and we'll try and answer as many of those as possible. Antoine's colleague Amandine is also on the call too, so she may respond to some during the session live. We are recording the session, so you'll get a link to it in a follow-up email towards the end of this week. And also closed captions are available in English, so you can turn them on using the captions button, which should be along the bottom, or if you can't see it, through the more button. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Antoine, and I'm really looking forward to this session, Antoine. We're really grateful that you're with us today, so we look forward to learning more about what you're going to tell us.
Great. Thank you very much, Antoinette, and thank you for this very kind introduction that really did great justice to LiveCase and also a little bit on my background. So thank you very much, and thank you also for this wonderful opportunity to get to present to all of you. There's been a lot of people that wanted to join. I think it's like over 400 people. I think, at least for my part, I've never seen that on a webinar. I don't know if it's your case as well for you on the Case Center, Antoinette. So it's a great privilege to have you all here. What I hope to do in this session is to try and make this, I suppose, as practical and as useful as possible, because I think one of the reasons possibly that there are so many of us on this call today, and I say us because I'm an educator myself, and actually the origin behind LiveCase is through my coursework. So I built a tool that I needed in a classroom, and I thought, hey, could this be useful for other educators around the world? Is that maybe we're feeling like there's something that's changing around us, or something has changed, or something should change. I think the PDF case study still has a wonderful place in our, as one of the materials that we can use in the classroom. Is still a wonderful vector to spark interesting conversations in a classroom, to make emerge some wonderful teaching frameworks and principles. But with the emergence of Gen AI, it has the question has arisen again as to whether or not we could do something maybe more dynamic and more immersive, and this is what we'll be talking about today. And again, it feels like this is the year where things are going to change, and in a way, it's quite exciting that we're living this moment in history, if one could describe it as that. So I'm going to share my slides. I'm going to share them without the full screen view because that way allows me to jump around. And I want this to be a little bit, I guess, authentic, and I want to respond a little bit to also what I might see in the chat as I discuss things, to try and make this as personalized as possible in the webinar. So I'll share my screen, do a few extra intros on LiveCase, then we'll dive into the tool, and then I'll just to show you what it looks like, because it's only once we see what the tool can do that we can start to imagine how we could possibly use it in our classrooms, to then maybe towards the end talk about a little bit more how we tend to design immersive AI cases using the LiveCase methodology and platform. So off we go. Share my screen. Ta-da. Okay, so you should see the screen. Yeah, okay. So, without repeating the very long title with the word case a lot, is true. But after all, this is about cases in some shape or form. So just a couple of slides before I show you a demo. I think, again, the origin story. So I'm an educator. I still teach at INSEAD. And a few years ago, maybe a bit further than a few years ago, had this realization that we have the wonderful case study-based methodology that we can use in a classroom. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have simulations. And I kind of felt like, could there be something in the middle that could be as immersive, as dynamic as a simulation, but just as simple and easy to create and write as a case study? And this is where maybe we feel that there's this possibly this new category emerging. Maybe we'll call it temporarily, at least for today and the next few months, as immersive AI cases that could sit nicely in between these two other wonderful ways of teaching, which are the case study and the simulation. So what does a live case kind of like look like or feel like? Essentially, what you have to imagine is that the students or the executive participants get immersed into a simulated scenario where they are the hero of a carefully crafted journey. They interact with different virtual characters in a multimedia kind of a setting. Of course, now it's all GenAI powered with as many chatbots as one wants to use and have, with different ways of using them, either as role plays or mentors or teaching guides or Socratic challengers, maybe. Comes, of course, powered with decision trees, gamification, powerful dashboards for you to do some, for it to be used in the debrief, but also post-class to try and maybe do some research, because LiveCase is also used for research, because you can do some A/B testing and see the results. But I think most importantly of all is the last bullet point that we see here, which is essentially the no-code authoring capability of our platform. Again, stemming from that, I guess, that initial intent of trying to make the creation of these immersive digital multimedia AI-powered experiences really as simple as a click-based experience as can be done, in effect, or in the hope again to try and empower all of us to be able to create, exciting content for our learners in our various classrooms, independent of level, subject matter, industry, geography, length, and complexity. So this is our, I guess our motto here at LiveCase, is that we're trying to hopefully empower all of you to be able to create, interesting experiences for your learners. Now, it's all great in theory, so now I'll just show you a little bit what it looks like. I'll show you first like a student experience or learner experience. So here I'm on the learner view. You'll notice that it's basically a website. It's mobile responsive, so you can use it, or students can use it on the smartphone or a tablet or computer. There's nothing to install. It works around the world, including China. I think there's somebody from China on the call. And here we see in the central bit, and the story as it has already unfolded. I've already clicked through some of it, but it's just to give you a bit of an impression. Essentially, you've got these characters coming in, and then you interact with them. Here, there's like a little chatbot experience we could have. I'll show you that in a second in more detail. And I'll just go to the bottom. Oh, you can see some points, multiple choice questions emerged. And in this example, which is around emotional capital, maybe a participant answered a question and got 60 out of 100, and a bit later 100 out of 100. So again, this can be gamified, can be used for assessments or not. It's all based on what the learning objectives are and and who is your target audience, and in multimedia assets as we can see here. So I'll just click through, and essentially the story, I'll go to the next episode. So this is the beginning of episode 3. Oh, it's very short, episode 3. I finished, but you can see that essentially we're just clicking through the experience and we're interacting with the different virtual characters in that sort of like read-through methodology, which makes it really immersive and emotionally engaging. And it's really quite fantastic to see how the learners engage with the material because of the fact that they have a role in the story, they have challenges to solve, and then also ultimately they get like different points of views and characters, and so they feel like they're the hero of the journey, which is quite nice. So there's like a gamified aspect, but there's also a storytelling aspect. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an example, but you'll see, I'll show you a little bit more as we click around. So let's imagine that I have a class, and let's say it's 4:12 p.m. in the afternoon here in Fontainebleau, France, and I've got a class, let's say, in 18 minutes. So I've logged on to livecase.com. I already have an account. It's free to create and author content. So if you want, you can follow along with me and see what I do. And you can also, if you want, like on the side, like launch a web browser and kind of like go through the experience with me if you would like. So if you do that, you would have to first create an account. And once you've created an account, you would land to a page a bit like this. Of course, I have many more live cases than you would have. And in the upper right-hand corner of the website, we see a little button called Create Case. So I'm going to create a case. And there's 3 modes. We have now, of course, AI-powered content creation capabilities where it's almost fully automatic. We have guided journeys as well, where we go through the creation process in a more stepwise function. And then we can also go full manual, which is what I'm going to click through today for our purposes. So let's imagine I've got this class coming up. I want to teach my students something around AI transformation. And I'm going to, because I travel a lot, and I suppose a lot of you do too, I'm going to set it inside the world of a hotel group. So first I'll kind of like give it a high level name. So AI transformation. I will select the type. Here we can select episode, season, or series. Essentially, the stories are constructed in a bit of a Netflix kind of a way. Again, try to simulate the way content is being consumed predominantly. Shall I dare say it, by most generations now these days. And so I'm going to select now an episode just for the purposes of the demo, and then click create. I'm now here on the author side of the platform, and because this is very much well, I'll start by one thing before. Sorry, I'll go to basics. So I've given it a title, AI transformation, and I'm going to give it a short description. Now, of course, because I prepared this in advance, it's going to be a bit simpler for me. I'm just going to paste something that I've done before, and just to read a little bit of it, but not all of it. Essentially, I'm going to create this fictitious, for the moment fictitious, but this could be a real situation as well. Aurora Grand Hotels, global luxury hotel group. And essentially, I want the learners to come in as a chief transformation officer, and they will ultimately need to decide how much of an AI transformation they would like to implement inside of this hotel group. My learning objectives are, at a high level, evaluate different AI transformation choices, lead the transformation through influence, and then hopefully deploy a responsible design that will ultimately be accepted by the organization. I'll pause there for one little second because I want to jump around a little bit between the tool and how to think about the tool. It's really fundamental to remember that LiveCase, just like the word processor when we're writing a case study, or any sort of like coding environment to create a much more enhanced, like fully blown simulation like we probably have in our imaginations or experiences, we need to start with what is our learning objective, and then who is our audience, and then how can we create then a learning experience that ultimately will allow the learners, the students, the executive participants to learn, but also apply what they've learned. So just like I said, the LiveCase is like a tool. What's more important than the tool is how do we use the tool? And so it's very important to be thinking, just like the case study, just like a simulation, just like running a normal class, what's my learning objective? What are the frameworks? And then what could be the sort of like exercises, the questions I could ask my audience that could help bring all this to life for them to really learn. So it's really important to start thinking first about like what is our learning objective. So this is just like a high-level choice for the purposes of a demo. So voilà, I've got my title, I've got my description. Now, I showed you earlier that a lot of the interactions occur through characters, so I have to create a few first characters. I'm jumping a few design steps, but I'll talk about that a bit later. So I'm going to create a character. As you can see, I've got the create button. I'm very going to simply, again, copy paste because I have it prepared a little bit in advance. But you can imagine what it would be like if I typed. So I'm going to call this person Sophie Dubois. She's the group head of people onboarding at Aurora. I'm going to create her. So I now have a character. Let's see if I have an image ready for her. Up. So again, you can create an AI avatar. I just so happen to have an image already there. So I've added an image and there we go. We got Sophie Dubois, group head of people onboarding with a little picture. And all I had to do was click a blue button called create and give the person a name. And at any point I can change the name to, if I want to call her Emma, I can just call her Emma now. And now she's now called Emma henceforth. So here we go. I'll just go back to Sophie because that's what I started with. So I've got my first character, and now I'm going to start creating content. So I click on the content part of the authoring tool, and I'm going to add a message. You will see that we have, you should see like a gray box with different option choices. I'm looking at you, Antoinette Amandine. Do you see image? Yeah, okay. So you can choose a message, an image, a video, emoji, GIF, all different sorts of like ways for the learners to interact and for us to create interesting, exciting, dynamic experiences for our learners. We keep adding more with a lot of regularity. Again, always with the objective of like, does this help the educational experience we're trying to create? And B, is it something that can easily be implemented and usable for all of us, basically? The point is not to just create bells and whistles. They need to have an objective, and we need to be able to use them. So I'll start, and so you can see multiple choice questions, open-ended text questions, drop downs, ranking, matrix, range, all the different kinds of interactions you would usually get on any digital platform like Mentimeter, Qualtrics, etc. So exist basically. So I'll start with a message first because we need to welcome our learners. So let's see, what did I do? Oh yeah, so I have this. Again, I've got a few messages ready. Just again, in terms of like a design philosophy, again, just like the case study methodology, we have to set the situation. And then we need to make that situation evolve to like a complication, for those of you who remember the SCQA framework, situation, complication, question, answer, that can be one of the models to write the story. There are many others and variations of all those. But so first I need to situate the learners because they need to understand in their first few messages what they're getting themselves into. So I prepared a message from Sophie saying, welcome to our group, and we are a luxury group operating all over the world with this kind of revenue, and our motto and our brand is about human warmth, and a few more other details. So I'm just going to create that, and I'm going to, oh, I forgot to do one thing, but it's okay. You see, I can just click it. I need to choose the character that says this message. I only created Sophie, so I've got to select Sophie, and I'm going to click Save. So now we see that Sophie would first come in and say that message. So let's check. I've got the little preview mode here. I click preview and ta-da! I've created my first live case. Not a very interesting live case so far, I admit. You notice that the Markdown language is capable as possible here on live case, for those of you who know Markdown. So let's expand that a little bit. Let's give the learner a little bit more information. So I'm going to copy paste another few couple of bubbles just to get this started. I'm going to select Sophie. This message is basically kind of like saying you the learner coming in as Chief Transformation Officer, and then your job is to try and figure out how strongly we need to implement AI inside the hotel group. The message should still come from Sophie. Create that. Ta-da! And I've got a third message, which is that famous, like, just to prepare them, because we find often that it's a better immersive experience if the learners know what their mission is. That helps with their emotional engagement with the story that we're trying to craft. Again, there are many different ways to write stories, so it's not to impose any specific model, but this is one of them. And here, Sophie is presenting basically the dilemma. Should we standardize AI across the whole portfolio of hotel, or should we be a little bit more selective in our implementation of any AI strategy? So voila, we kind of like set it up a little bit in a bit of an SCQA kind of a framework, bit of a situation, the role that the learner will have, and the beginning of the complication leading to the question. Now, we all want to have like chatbots in our classroom. They are very powerful. They're very useful for a number of different pedagogical and storytelling purposes. So what I did is that I want to now add two characters who are going to come in with two different points of view. One who's more favorable to AI transformation and one that's going to give an opposing view. That way, the learners, when they will interact with the LiveCase, will have these two opposing viewpoints. And also what's wonderful about using chatbots in those kind of experiences is the following. One is because it's kind of like GenAI powered, as we can understand it, the learner can kind of like explore a conversation in different ways. So if you have like 30 students in a classroom, there will be some similarities across the 30, but some differences as well, which means that when they come back to the classroom, there's a lot more variety, much more like insight to work with for the debrief. And the second thing is that with just the creation of a very simple chatbot, it's very easy to create content that can take like 15, 20 minutes of time for a learner to use with not the need to create a lot of content around. So let me just do this so that you can get a feeling for this. So I've got these two characters. Could create lay up. So, and let me see if I have a picture for her as well. It's always more fun to add pictures. It makes it feel more real and more up. So here I've created Li Wei Tan. She's the Chief Commercial Officer at Aurora Group. And I'm going to create another one. She's going to be, I think, the more pro AI character. Great. Now, Carlos Mendez, Global Head of Guest Experiences, much more front-facing with the client, knows all the tactical, practical issues that occur in the world of hotels. I should mention that I've worked in hotels myself, so that's maybe my own personal bias and experience coming out here. And so I've got my three characters, so now I can go back to the content. I've got my messages from Sophie. I'm going to now add a new message type called Talk to Character AI. I'm going to first select Li Wei Tan, and I'm going to give her like a basic set of knowledge. And of course, we can talk endlessly about how to create, great, let's call them scripts. If you think of these chatbot kind of characters as either the non-player characters in games or the other voices in a case study, and just how we probably all use chatbots if we do, or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. We can obviously give a script, to these bots in any different way, like many different ways, like short, long, etc. So here I'm just doing a short little one where I'm telling her that essentially she's favors strongly option A, which is to scale AI more aggressively, and then a few things she might want to say as part of the experience. So I've created that, and now we see her appear with a purple bubble. And just to illustrate how quickly we can create a bot, here's my LiveCase. This is like a preview mode that comes straight out of the box for me to check as I'm writing it. Here are the three initial messages. And this is kind of like the content kind of gets printed, so to speak, digitally that way, again, to keep the attention of the learners. And now I've hit now my moment where I can now speak to Li Wei Tan. I'm going to click her to talk to her, and I'm going to say, hello, how are you? Da-da-da, and here we are. I got my first chatbot. And I just have 5 minutes left before my class because I said I would be going to class at 4:30 my time. So of course I could keep chatting to Li Weitan. She's going to tell me how wonderful it is to go for AI. I'm now going to bring in Carlos Mendez to the rescue of the AI skeptics. I've also created a mini knowledge base. These can be much more extended than what I'm doing right now. And of course, this is the purpose of today's call, is to kind of like just show you what this tool could do. Not necessarily all the details, but he's going to come in and he's a little bit more. We should do augmentation and then a few quotes. And again, this can be pages and pages long. And then I'm going to click create. And so now Carlos Mendez comes in and, oh, sorry, I can actually try the conversation here too if I want to. And I just say, hello, Carlos, what do you think of AI? And let's see what he says. I should mention that we have like system level prompts that make sure that the bots, first of all, minimize the hallucination. That's one point. Two, that they stay within the context of the story and the learning objectives, so that they don't veer off into the ether. This is all again in the name of creating an educational experience and not just for fun. And we have a lot of students trying to break our bots, and not many, if any, succeed. So here we see what he say. Our brand is built on emotional memory, not transaction speed. While AI offers opportunities for efficiency, we must be cautious about its impact. So do you see how, isn't that great? Like, it's sort of like responding the way you would want it to. Again, for the purposes of the learning objectives I have in mind, is like, how far do we want to go with this AI? And of course, Li Weitan would say something slightly different to that. So now I've got 3 more minutes. I need to ask the students a question because this is all about, like, in the end, what dilemma should we be presenting the learners with? So I'm going to bring back Sophie. I'm going to use a multiple choice question this time. She's basically going to say, here's the moment of decision. How far do we want to go with AI? So which path do you want to choose? And I'm going to just give them two options. Option A, scale AI aggressively, or option B, augment, not automate. And I'm going to create. Ta-da! And this is wonderful because what that means in terms of a learner experience is that they will get they'll get to this point and they'll have to choose. And then me, the educator on the other side, will see the choices that they made. We'll see who answered what, see also how long they took to choose. And I can use that for the debrief. I can show the chart in Classroom, they're on the dashboard. I can show you the dashboard a little bit later. Or I can just use it and copy a screenshot and put it in my slide pack. And now I can come into class much better prepared. But what I like to do after an MCQ usually is to add an open-ended text question as well. Again, from Sophie, it makes it a little bit more like immersive if it comes from her, for example. And with a question like, please tell me why. It's always good to know why people make the choices they make. And voila, I have a mini little life case. I've introduced a situation. I gave them a role. I gave them like the beginning of a complication. I gave them two bots that came in with two different points of view. And then I present with them like a very simple dilemma question about how far do we want to go with AI, with a little bit of a text to explain to me why they decided to do that. Just reading the content in terms of like number of characters per minute, etc., plus the chatbot interactions where the students can get lost, and often we have to put like limits, or we tell the students stop. And then they get the choice, and then the why. Very easily it can fill 10-15 minutes of time in the classroom and lead to an interesting conversation in the classroom. Now, okay, so I finished my content. It's 4:30. Now I need to get it to the classroom ready. All I need to do is click a few hosting kind of features to say that this is only visible to me for the moment, because ultimately you can use it in your classroom and just keep it for yourselves. Or if you want, you can also get it published on the Case Center, but also with us if you want to. And so now I'm going to publish the changes. And I am going to start a free playtest, and I'm going to see this is what the students would see and look like. So I can test that it's working. I can see the messages are coming. I'm not going to read all this. I can talk to Lee again. hello again. And then I'm just going to say something. I can talk to Carlos again. And then I think you're getting the point here. And then I can then get the question that Sophie is asking me. And I'm going to go for augment, not automate. And then I'm going to say, because the human touch is still important. And ta-da! There. My live case is more or less ready. I tested it. If I go back to here, authoring, AI transformation, I forgot to put an image for it. Another thing I could do just to show you, I'm going to start a hosted session, because the real way I would do this in the class, if I had to use this in the classroom, is that I have to start a hosted session, like a Zoom session, if you want to think of it that way. That's going to lead to, oh, no, sorry, I need to click for the demo. I need to click the other one, the free hosted one. And ta-da, I'm here. And all I need to do is I either send the participant a link, or I flash a QR code, or I give them a copy code. Now, of course, if this is on the Case Center website on their catalog, they would just go into the course pack. Well, Antoinette will explain that better than me later, but essentially they go to the course pack, click through, and then they would just land directly into the learner side, and you would get access to this dashboard. So you can skip this whole invitation phase, and you would then be able to follow through the progression of all the learners across. Now this is all empty because I just created this, and you'll be able to follow through, see the answers, etc. In fact, just because I'm here, let me see if there's like an example I can find from an older version. So yeah, so this is one that's been used in the past. You can see the evolution across the different episodes, who completed which. If there are points, you can see the evolution of all the points, the dynamics, etc. And then at any point, you can click any of the interactions and see all the details of all the choices they made. You can see how long they took, what they chose. If it's open-ended text questions, you can see all the answers. There's all sorts of AI summary tools if you have to do this for large classes. So anyway, all different kinds of like normal classical simulation dashboardy type things for debrief or research, like I said before. So hopefully that illustrates how quickly I went from a simple sort of like idea. I want to do something in the hotel industry about AI transformation, and how far do we want to go around certain learning objectives. Of course, I'd have to think about the theoretical framework behind it and what I'm going to teach and how I'm going to use that for the debrief. But I created content very simply and quickly. If I wanted to extend all this, I could do so in a number of different ways. First of all, there's all sorts of like teaching note aspects that we can add directly onto the platform, like the framework, the best practices, the proposed timeline, etc. Just to jump around a little bit, if you want to get published, it's important to have a teaching note in the end. So LiveCase Move, which the Case Center have on their catalog, is one of the best sellers, and is comes with a teaching note. So if you want to use a LiveCase, they all come with teaching notes. And if you want to create a LiveCase that gets published, it's good and important to write a teaching note. The teaching notes are very similar to case studies. The case study teaching note, they have to talk about, again, the theory, the framework, the setting, the story, how to debrief, etc. It just needs one or two extra sections around like, how to link up and the digital aspects. But again, we built this tool for ourselves. We didn't want any technology issues, so it's really simple to implement. So these extra technical sections are not all that long, actually, it turns out. So that's kind of like on the tail end, because again, this is all about writing content that is useful for the classroom. And yes, what I wanted to show you was just like something a little bit more extensive, so that you can see how far this can go. This is a live case, again, in the catalog of Case Center. It's around aligning health and business. This actually is a shortened version, just for the purposes of showing a demo. And you can see that you can add like videos. This is a GenAI generated talking head, which is always quite nice. It makes it feel a bit more real and dramatic, where in this case, the CMO comes in and says, we need to change because otherwise we're not going to succeed. You can add all sorts of graphics. A lot of the graphics can be created directly on LiveCase, or you can simply use Google Slides, PowerPoint, Keynote, Apple Keynote to create slides and then upload images, upload files. Like it's all very simple and straightforward. Again, the whole point is to make this as quick, as efficiently as possible for us educators to create content without, spending endless amount of time. No need to talk to coders, no need to talk to designers. You can just do it yourself. And so here we have, so the situation is that the learners come in and as part of a task force to try and implement healthier products in a soda company. They have to think about 4 different new products to make it, to launch new healthy products. They get to talk with 4 different chatbots who are different customer types who have different needs. So just to show you a different kind of like knowledge base or AI script, it can be a little bit longer than what I just did for the hotel group. Again, and it can be even longer than that, and it can be much more decision-based, etc. So, like I said, you can go to town on that, and it's really quite fun actually to create those. And in the end, what they need to do is allocate which new product to which customer they think is best, and then again, please tell us why, and then end of story. That's still a single episode story, but just jumping to maybe, before I jump to the multiple episode, this is a multiple episode thing, but just to show to those of you who are really like into decision trees, etc., you have decision tree capabilities. All these colored little lines here that you can see are all based on decisions of decisions of decisions. And so you can see that you can really go really far with the decisions of the decisions, and then to the point that even you, the author, would get lost with your own story. But joke aside, it's really cool to have the combination of like scripted decision trees to guide the journey, guide the learning towards like, obtaining insights or maybe falling into a trap that you can learn from. And then with GenAI chatbots to try and, be a bit more open-ended, a bit more inclined towards curiosity or Socratically challenging the learners. Jumping back to the Aurora one. I went probably too quickly, but if I go back to my Li Weitan or my Carlos, you could see that here I put them as Socratic challengers as bots. So combining the decision trees with specific chatbot prompts is really a powerful combination in terms of like, again, sort of like either teaching or creating interesting stories that engage, again, all in the purposes of learning. Just jumping around because I find it really just so interesting. Like you can use the AI bots in all different kinds of ways, like as role plays, as tutors, as creative partners, as coworkers. Like one of the big things I first noticed, of course, we all noticed it and we all have that problem, in year 1 of ChatGPT, which was 3 years ago now, I would see the students on LiveCase before we implemented chatbots, and then ChatGPT on the other tab, and they would copy paste. So we thought, hey, you know what? Let's give them ChatGPT on LiveCase, so at least we can see what they do and teach them how to use the tool, the GenAI tools. And so we have like a coworker mode. That way, they don't need to go on ChatGPT or Claude. They can just do it directly on LiveCase, and then we can see and we can, help them learn. AI is Oracle, where actually the AI makes the decisions for the learners, which arguably could start to become a bit more of a reality for all of us. AI as coach, AI as companion, AI adversary, and I'm sure all of you have either thought of those. This is obviously inspired by Ethan Mollick from Wharton. I thought of all your versions as well. So anyway, just all different kinds of ways to use the decision trees, the bots, and then the points. For those of you into like who need things like a more assessment related, for exams, and maybe if I go back to this, we can see a few examples. I think I saw a few. Multiple choice questions can give rise to points. There's dynamic AI feedback also that the platform can deliver for open-ended text questions, so that they can, given what they type, they can get feedback based again on the learning objectives. All the AI role plays and the bots can also all be used for grading. So if I go to a character, no, not here. If I go to talk to character AI, maybe I'll go back to my transformation one. You see at the bottom, we can start to grade. So this is my Li Wei Tan, I think. Yeah, Li Wei Tan chatbot. At the bottom here, I can start to create like a grading metric so that I make sure that the learners are really utilizing the AI in a good way. So that because if they know that they're being assessed, sometimes it helps with concentration and engagement. Um, so voila, so basically way too many features to have fun with and create dynamic immersive AI experiences. It can be short, it can be long, it can be simple, it can be complex. It can be, maybe I'll just jump back to a slide that I think, because I want to give, and I got 3 more minutes maybe before I give the floor back to Antoinette, and then we open up for Q&A. It can be used for any different levels, undergrad, MBA, EMBAs, executive programs. It works really across all, if not most, learning objectives and outcomes, including accounting, finance, not just leadership, strategy, marketing, OB, decision sciences, ethics, of course. You can run it inside of the class. The students are in the class either individually or in groups. One computer, 4 people, 4 or 5 people around the computer, and they're clicking through with together. Different roles. They can also have different roles in the story, so they all have to have their individual devices. It can be 15 minutes, like it can be 3 days. Like I run the capstone at INSEAD for all degree programs, MBA and EMBA included. So all the students have to take a 3-day long LiveCase experiential simulation, including teaching, LiveCase, role plays. It's like one big gigantic learning experience. So you can really go quite far with it. You can control the tempo, the format, the depth, and there's nothing to install. It just all runs on browsers. So that's really quite cool. And maybe final words, just because again, just the tool, but I just want to repeat this. Like we're educators, and we built this for us in a big general sense. It's really important to really remember that this is all about teaching. No, sorry, creating a teaching experience. So it's really, I won't read the whole thing. I'm happy to give it to Antoinette afterwards, or you can do a screenshot. It's all quite simple and basic, but it's funny how sometimes even we forget when we do our own work, because it's always like the rush of the next 24-hour deadlines. But it's always important to think about what is the purpose of the experience, what are the learning objectives, what's the core framework we want to have behind all this, then what is the role of the learner to try and place them into a place where they might start to feel like they're actively engaged with it, the stakeholder landscape, so who are the dragons and the knights that they'll be facing across the story, then the whole sort of like starting situation, so like how does the story evolve, and then what is the major central decision, tension, major dilemma that they need to face at the end of the single episode, multiple season experience, depending on how far you want to go. Yeah, just to give you a sense of scale, like a single episode, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And so 3 episodes, like 45 minutes, and then 5, 6, 7 seasons can therefore last several hours, just to get a mental representation here in terms of like how much time it takes. And then very importantly, a learner task and experience arc to really keep them engaged and really get to apply at different moments, not just at the end. And then finally, some form of way to assess them, and all in the end goal to lead to really the most important part of the experience, which is really the debrief in class. Of course, it is completely asynchronous and digitized. For those of you who have fully online courses, the platform can do that, but I think most of us on this call are probably still running classes. In the end, this is all about like having a wonderful debrief in the classroom where the students, the learners felt like they were engaged, they were emulated, they were energized, and they had a whole bunch of like different paths that then leads to really constructive conversation in the classroom where we can, do the debrief, and then hopefully they learn something. So voilà, Antoinette, on time.
On time. This is
Yes.
incredible. Well done. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
sharing all of that. I know it's a lot for everybody to take in.
Yes.
But I think Amandine has said in the chat that we'll follow up with the slides and I think a step-by-step approach. Amandine, did you mention? But anyway, we'll make sure you have all the resources you need to look at this in your own time and explore it fully as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. Typically, it's just gone funny on me, which is good timing. Right, let's just
The
share.
god of demos.
Ah, it always does things at the wrong time.
Yes, it's
Right, so
okay.
let me share my screen. So this is the page that I put in the chat. So you can get to this by just going to our web address /livecase, or if you land on the site and go to browse and buy, there's a simulations and multimedia section, so you can get to it through there. So this explains, I mean, it's designed for people who don't know what a live case is. So it talks to you about what a live case is and also how we distribute them. And I'll come back to that in just one moment. At the bottom, you'll see the list of the current live cases that we distribute. So Antoine mentioned when you're setting up your live case, you can, in the visibility, set who can access it and ultimately, I guess, who it comes through to for distribution at the end. So these are the ones that we have currently, and I'm just going to click to view one here. So we'll pick this one that Antoine wrote with Pierre Chandon from INSEAD. And the cases on our site look very similar to everything else. You get the same metadata about them, the abstract, the settings, the related products. But over on the right-hand side here, this is where you can preview the cases. And if you're thinking about writing your own live case, I guess it's a really good practice to have a look and see how powerfully people have created these brilliant cases, just to get some ideas. So if we click here, the view preview of an instructor version, it's going to take us through, and you can see here the dashboard that an educator would see. And this is essentially what you would use as an educator when you've bought the case to set up how the students are going to access it. I'm just going to close that down. You can also preview the case as a learner. So let's just wait for that to appear on here. Here you go. So you can see what the behavior is as a student. And if you're thinking about teaching one of these, I guess that's really important. So along with the educator preview and the teaching note, I'll show you where to access that in a minute, really understanding what your students are going to be engaging with is really important. So this learner preview is super important in the process. And to access the teaching note, it's just the third link on the right here, and it should ping that up. There we go. So as Antoine mentioned, these are really thorough and they talk about all the pedagogical side of teaching the case, but also cover some of the technical aspects if that's needed. So let's just come back out of there. Now, lots of people have been asking questions about how students access the cases and how they're purchased. So you can see here there is a price here, and this I believe varies per live case in our system. I guess it depends on how many episodes and how many seasons. So that's how live case I would imagine have chosen how to price those. If you want to buy one, there are two methods for this. You can add it to your basket and you go through and you tell us how many students that's going to be used with. We set up access for that number of students. You get a link at the end of the process that you can put on your LMS or your VLE, and then the students click on that link, come through to our site, and it essentially takes one of those purchased copies from your group that you've bought. And then it groups the students into a cohort for you so you can manage them through the educator view. You can also, if you don't have your own VLE or you don't want to use it, you can use our course pack facility. So there is one of those that is school pay. So again, where the school pays for access, but we do have a student pay course pack facility. So if you want to push the cost of those, not just the live cases, but other materials on your course back to the students, you can use the student pay model and you can add live cases, other cases. You can upload your own materials that the students can access for free, and package all of those together. And then students can pay for access to those different materials if you don't want to pay for those as a school. So those are the two different options that we offer, and they're all accessible via this page. And there's more information on that live case page about those models too to help you understand that. So hopefully that covers some of those questions. I don't think that there is anything else in the chat for me there, particularly following on from that. But Amandine, I think probably you have some of the questions collated.
Yes, so thank you everyone for all the questions. We will be sending the recording and the slide deck afterwards, and I've picked out some of the common questions for Antoine to answer, and I guess we'll try get through as many as possible. So, Antoine, a few questions from Meshesh, who's asking what are the challenges for asynchronous classes, specifically for live cases?
Oh, Antoine, you're muted.
Sorry. Broad question. Obviously, it depend, if you had more specifics, maybe you could type it into the chat. If you go fully asynchronous, it changes how you would write the content because it needs a lot more hand-holding, let's say, so to speak, on the digital platform. Than would be the case if it were, let's say, synchronous or used in view of doing a, uh, a debrief. And specifically, just to try and be a little bit more concrete, is that obviously one would need to more often than not provide a little bit more of the answers ultimately on the platform because the learners, if they're fully asynchronous, doing some kind of like online credential course, they want to get feedback in the moment and they want to know why they got this score, not that score, what's the better choice versus this one, etc. Whereas if you're planning to write content in view of using it in the classroom, you have to leave it much more at that case study, sort of like question, it depends sort of feeling at the end, so that you can debrief it still in class. That would be one aspect. The other thing to think about is that what do we mean by asynchronous? Again, we're one of the reasons why we're called LiveCase is to bring the case study to life. And so the case study is a bit more the inspiration and simulation in some ways, in the following way, in terms like what's the student experience? What we're all hoping to do is that the live case would be essentially experienced by the students before coming to class, maybe individually, then they talk in groups of 5, and then they come to class and then a debrief, like you would normally do it with a case study. So if that's the asynchronous mode you were thinking about there, you still have to leave a little bit in the content creation mode, a bit less of the here are the answers than you would do if it's fully asynchronous for an online credential type program. So that's why it depends a little bit by what you meant by asynchronous there.
Yeah, I think the added comment was would they need to split it into different periods of time
Ah,
or in one session or over the semester?
you can do all that. So it depends if it's one episode, kind of hard to, you can split it, but yeah, a lot of educators use it. If it's multi-episode, they break it up depending on their on their teaching plan, their objectives, and so it depends a bit on the length and the type of live case. So yeah, because of the episode way that the content is created, you can absolutely break it up into different episodes, just like Netflix, the next episode only delivered on Friday.
So next, Narek was asking how theoretically informed are the characters? Is this something that you need
Mm,
to care about,
yeah.
especially with the answers that the characters are going to give?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, super. Yeah, great question. So that's the one that once you start writing these things, you spend a lot of time thinking about. And of course, again, it depends on how much you want to give them. But two things. One is that again, at the system level, there's like as an author, one gets to create the knowledge base, but then there's system level prompts at the higher level, again, to protect for hallucination, but also to make sure that the bots behave within the bounds of the broad learning objective of that specific live case series. But then if we're at the level of the bot itself, let's say, so they already know a little bit about the framework, but not sufficiently if you wanted to do a much deeper kind of experience. So there you can inside of the bot, like put as much of the framework as you think is important for that experience. Again, depending on what you want to use the bot for, role play, teaching, tutoring, that will change how much and in what way you might add content. One thing to remember, because it's good to manage expectations as well, is that, there is just like, this is all LLM based, and I'm sure we all know what that means. And there's a memory limitation if you want to use the word memory, right? If you make something a knowledge base which is the size of a book, it'll be too much, right? So there's like a balance to be had between detail and abstract.
Perfect. And another question from the same person, which we talk about a lot in our calls. Is it okay to use real pictures and information from protagonists when you write a
Uh,
case? about an
Yes.
existing company.
So real or fictional. So you can write live cases with real in a real setting. That's easier for all of us because we come from the case study world, and case studies were based on real, and now we want to base it on the real. If one goes that way, when it comes the moment of adding a chatbot interaction, an AI chatbot interaction specifically, we recommend not to do it with a real person unless you have that person's consent. And the solution that we are recommending right now, it feels like it makes sense both ethically and pragmatically, is to create a virtual fictitious character that is basically almost as knowing as the protagonist, the real person, but is not the real person. That way, when the students are interacting with that AI person, it's not the real person. So there's no like wrong in-person. There's not an in-person a non-consented personification, let's say. Then there's the whole question of like, is it better to go fictitious? Some of the advantages of going fictitious, meaning completely inventing the whole story, like I was doing with the Aurora Hotel Group, is that obviously there's more creative latitude. There's no need for the consent. But if it's completely virtual, so that these are the advantages. But if it's fully virtual, some of the students might be resistant because they're like, oh, it's too fictitious. So what we tend to recommend is to say, heavily inspired from the real world, and these could be the real case study examples that then get used in the debrief in the class. But we created a fictitious scenario based on these real events. That way, we have the best of both worlds, arguably.
Great. And Anna, thank you for your question. I had it noted. Can you tell us a bit about how grading works, some of the features?
Yeah. Okay. So two types of grading. One is like, let's call it like a hard-coded in a way. So multiple choice question type thing. So you create a characteristic, and you can create as many characteristics as you want. Again, this is all click-based. So let's say in my Aurora group, I could have created something, I don't know, on AI, strategic judgment and AI transformation is what I had in my notes, for example. I could do a score out of 100. And then inside the experience, I could introduce some multiple choice questions with 3 or 4 different option choices, and each one of them can give rise to different points out of 100, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 out of 100. And so you can hard code like exact numbers for specific options. Then once you enter the world of like more AI grading, if it's based at the level of the chatbot interaction, it's going to be a much more like a definitional way of doing it. So you have to define what good answers look like so that the AI can understand what gives rise to a good or better score. And then the AI calculates the score. You can give it boundaries. You can say, this is a good answer for 20. This is a good answer for 100. And you can help it. But ultimately, it's the AI is going to do that grading judgment. And then there's AI feedback, which works a little bit in the same way, which is more for open-ended text questions, and is there to sort of like say, you've answered this, but given the theoretical model, maybe this could have been a better answer, is broadly what it tries to do. And by the way, the students really enjoy these things because they like getting the feedback in the moment. So it's all really quite useful.
Thank you. Antoinette, I'm just wondering if we have enough time for one more question.
I think
Yeah, I'm here.
one more.
One more again.
Okay, perfect. So Dr. Oxada was wondering, once you've developed your case and the teaching notes, what's the process and the timelines to get it published on the Case Center website?
Yes, that's a good one. So a few things that is good to get published. It's better to have used it in your classroom at least twice, we recommend. And it can be done with peers as well, and people that you trust, and students of former classes or alumni, etc. But it's good to do 2 tests. Then it's good to also, if you can, do some peer review, just like you would do for a normal case study, show it to colleagues or partners or partners in crime, I was thinking, in your wider network to get their feedback as well. And then we can help as well. So LiveCase has a studio service which can help with instructional design and getting help getting published. And then once all that's done, we can present it to the Case Center, and then the Case Center, they decide. But usually the Case Center is what's it called? Helpful in trying to get published. So they tend to be quite efficient. It's hard to say how long it takes. If everything is lined up, it could be as simple as a few weeks. But because of people's availabilities, it's more a few months, just to be practical about it.
Yeah. It really varies in terms of our publishing. It depends how busy we are, really. We try and get everything through as quickly as we can.
Yeah,
So with live cases, we try and process those within a few weeks of them being with us. Um,
yeah,
it helps because we're dealing with live case who know how we need the metadata, who know how we need the links, so it makes it a very smooth process.
yeah.
Um, I think the longer process is probably writing the case and getting it ready to
Yes.
doing the
Yeah.
testing.
The
And Antoine's
publishing
right,
bit is, yeah, sorry.
the
Sorry.
testing's really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But theoretically, if you're writing a live case, if you're creating one, it's because you have a need in your classroom. So it shouldn't
yeah,
be a problem to test it.
yeah.
Okay, so well, we're 1 minute over our hour, so we've done super well on our timing. Thanks, guys. And I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And we really hope that you've been inspired to either try a live case in your teaching or embark on creating one. Um, We'll be sending out a follow-up email towards the end of the week that will include links to the recording and to the live cases. We'll include the slides and the other resources that Antoine has shared. We'd really love to hear your thoughts on today's session. So I think Zoom should hopefully pop up a link in your browser window when you're done. And we'll include a link to the feedback form in our email as well. But really, I just want to say a big thanks to Antoine and Amandine today for sharing all of this with us. We hope you found it interesting and we hope that it takes you forwards in your case teaching. So thank you all for joining us and hopefully we'll see you on another webinar at some point soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you.